Chapter 1. Aren Kesik lounged against a mortared stone wall, one hand concealed within his black overcoat, the other working at his teeth with a toothpick. He removed the last vestiges of salted meat he'd nicked from a street vendor, one of many in the crowded High District market, as haughty noble patrons flowed through Grantham Street like multi-hued vultures circling the sky above Wifeton slaughterhouses. The brick and wood buildings surrounding Aren, darkened by years exposed to soot and smog, boxed High District in like a predator's cage. On this cool spring morning, Aren was the tiger, and these unsuspecting pedestrians were rabbits tossed into his domain at feeding time. Scrutinizing the oblivious nobility with the trained eye of a farling thief, one who survived long enough to gain such an eye and keep it, Aren needed the empty coin pouch tucked into his coat pocket between deft fingers. Somehow, despite his focused surveillance this morning, he had managed to lose track of Ref, his partner in crime. The old man had taught Aren the art of thieving, so he let it pass. Distracted marks are easy marks. Easy marks keep the reds away. Aren's lifelong mantra played on repeat in the back of his mind, always present, always persistent, the only truth in Teleria that never let him down. Sure, his acquaintances argued a mark worth robbing is never easy, but experience taught Aren that pursuing quality over quantity often led to one of two outcomes for such an industrious thief: life in the Blackstone mines, or the dismembering end of a Charodin's blade. He scratched his beard and grimaced. Which reminds me, I've been meaning to ask Ref how he relieves himself with no hands. Aren flexed his prickling fingers and stuck them into the pockets of his second-hand slacks. The occasional sympathy pains were decent reminders to uphold the mantra. Aren had always been rather fond of his hands, and he wasn't too keen on losing them any time soon. Amidst the struggle to just survive in this Lord-forsaken city, the last thing he needed was to join the ranks with the maimed. Taldara buzzed with life around him, a fine example of the disaster known as the Age of Illumination. Who would have figured, beside society's have-nots, that selling our souls to the industrial gods would turn the world into a greedy, classist nightmare? Aren, for one, lauded being unclaimed, or unchained, as some farlings preferred to say. A certain freedom came with being shunned if you could stay out of the workhouses. Aren rolled a golden domine across his knuckles and hummed his favourite Talarian sea shanty, a remnant of his youthful adventures some 30 years past. Most farlings stopped counting their age past the claiming ceremony. He judged the robber barons as they darted in and out of luxurious shops, turning one-upmanship into a rite of passage with upturned noses and bulging bags of useless trinkets. Meanwhile, the unclaimed persisted in squalor at Far End, Taldara's infamous Low District, the walled-off section of soot-stained tenements and crumbling buildings where dreams went to die, or at least be crushed beyond recognition. If you were a farling, life dealt a hand from a stacked deck. No family, no prospects, and no wealth seemed like trying to win 5-card draw with 2 cards, and one of them was an IOU. As Aren focused in on a short, mustachioed man doling out coin to a fruit stand owner, a phantom sensation tickled at his neck. "You're too slow, old man," Aren said, eyes searching the crowd for his next unwitting victim. "Damn it all, Kesik," Ref replied from beside him as he wiped his shriveled nose with a handless arm. "If I hadn't taught you so well, I'd be a sack of domini richer." His unkempt greying hair danced on his shoulders with every syllable. Aren chuckled and turned his head enough for his aged mentor to slide into his peripheral vision. "You taught me well enough not to carry around a sack of anything. What happened to the handful I gave you last week? Ref shuffled his feet and winced, his features distorted by time and hard living.
An old man finds ways to spend his money. Some wholesome, some not. Poor old Ref can't resist a good pair of legs, card table or otherwise.
He smiled his best smile as Aren shook his head, a reluctant grin creasing the corners of Aren's mouth. Aren's sense, the near supernatural gift of intuition alerting him to danger or a potential mark, tugged at his attention. Through the mass of vacant-faced fashionistas and doting suitors, across the grimy streets caked in the soot of progress, the stench of desperation hung in the air like a fog. Tossing his toothpick, Aren scanned the sea of faces and hoped to catch the unmistakable eye movements of a nervous victim-to-be.
Where are you, Mark? There you are.
A shifty-eyed man jostled a doting couple as he stepped into view, acting indifferent, his dark nobleman's coat billowing. The sweat on his forehead, however, betrayed the man's true disposition. Aren smirked and raised an eyebrow. He'd observed enough young farlings to recognize the quiet paranoia of a first-time thief. But a claimed thief? Unprecedented. Despite himself, Aren's excitement welled up at the prospect of an easy mark with a lucrative payoff. Distracted marks are easy marks. Easy marks keep the Reds away. Distracted thieving noblemen are fair game? Stubbs, make yourself useful. Come over here and lend me a hand, Aren said, beckoning the old man to his side. Ref had wandered off to charm a woman of ill repute, her gaudy makeup and minimalist wardrobe clashing against the pompous propriety surrounding her.
Oi! I told you not to call me that. What do you want?
Ref said as he trudged back to the wall.
And it ain't right asking me to lend you a hand.
He held up his handless arms. Well, had you been more careful and not listened to that smarmy prick Edvard, the Reds wouldn't have cut your hands off, Aren said, eyes fixed on his mark. You feel up to a little blind beggaring?
I thought you'd never ask, my boy.
Ref fumbled a blindfold and pewter cup from deep within his oversized coat pockets.
Even these old bones can still catch a mark or two.
Ref took his spot curbside and waited for Aren's cue. When he heard the chirp of Aren's whistled signal, the old thief stepped out in front of the mark.
Kind sir, could you spare an old man a coin or two? My eyes have failed me, but my spirit tells me you have a giving heart,
Ref said in a feeble voice. The mark tried to sidestep the blind beggar, but he found himself blocked by the crowd of people filing past. Out of my way! I don't have time for this! He glanced back up the street, head darting left and right. The man yelped when Aren walked into him and set him off balance. My apologies, sir. I was admiring the exquisite architecture and forgot myself, Aren said as he tipped his top hat and slipped a cloth-wrapped object into his coat pocket. Without responding, the mark leapt to his feet and elbowed the old man aside before disappearing into a nearby alley. Ref stuffed his disguise back into his coat and shared a triumphant look with Aren. The two men melted into the hustle and bustle of Grantham Street. Seconds later, an unusual hush fell upon the High District, starting toward Far End and moving like a wave toward Aren and Ref. Aren paled. Being a head taller than your average Talarian proved more curse than blessing in the pickpocket profession, a line-up amongst one's peers being especially troublesome. But it also afforded a thief an advanced view of approaching opportunities or threats. The sea of bodies parting before a line of hoods, cloth blood red in the noonday sun, was a fine example of the latter. He grabbed Ref's coat and guided him towards the nearest wall. The brick facade sandwiched between a high-end clothier and a small bookstore advertising the bestseller, The Overlord's Claimed, Obedience Over Birthright. Aren scowled. Propaganda at its finest.
Get off, Ren!
Ref grunted, protesting Aren's sudden departure from the street.
Quiet,
Aren whispered.
A mark brought the Reds.
Ref quieted, his knees shaking with fear. The last time he'd seen the Reds, they were forcing his eyes open while they fed his appendages to the pigs. In Aren's mind, the object he pilfered from the harried mark morphed into a red-hot ember, threatening to engulf his coat in flames. It better be worth it. He clenched his fingers again, worried he wouldn't have them for much longer. Had the mantra finally failed him after all this time? A bead of sweat trickled down Aren's temple and into his beard as the Reds marched into view. Even to a hardened farling, whose life of struggle began at the claiming and would end, if he or she were lucky, on a dirty tenement floor, the sight of the Overlord's elite, not-so-secret police force evoked a visceral response. Aren once witnessed a Red cut out a man's tongue for speaking ill of the Overlord. The crowd before them parted without a single command. Aren's face flushed when he laid eyes upon their red hoods and jet-black uniforms, their presence made somehow more disturbing by the expressionless steel masks they wore to obscure their identities. The ingenuity of their attire could not be overstated. One never knew whether an acquaintance might be a secret member of the Charodin. In Teleria, trust proved a luxury even the richest nobleman could not afford. "Don't mind me." Aren pretended to study the bookstore's newest offerings. "I'm just catching up on the latest brainwashing drivel." He could still scan the street in the window's reflection. Once the Reds marched past, footfalls soft even against the silent backdrop, Aren breathed out and unclenched his nether regions. Aren nudged Ref, and the two men hastened back to Far End. Behind them, echoing from a nearby alley, faint sounds of a commotion preceded the unfortunate Mark's shrieks. For the first time since he could remember, Aren Kesik experienced a tinge of regret. "We need to get rid of it," Aren said while he paced back and forth, his hands clenching and unclenching. The pickpocketed item lay on a small table within his cramped tenement room, still wrapped in cloth. He kept his distance, treating the object like an angry viper waiting for a chance to strike. "They will come searching for it, and they will find it." The journey back to Aren's room fed his paranoia. Every midday shadow and blind corner a potential Red in waiting. When the Reds arrived on Grantham Street, it became clear that his latest mark had been no ordinary noble, no ordinary thief. Aren was unaccustomed to such feelings of deep anxiety and insecurity. He blamed the cursed object in his possession for the unwelcome emotions. Ref stared at the fruit of their labor, his eyes filled with a deep hunger.
"We don't even know what it is, Ren. Shouldn't we at least take a peek before we make it disappear?"
Aren rubbed at his beard. Perhaps the shock of his mantra failing him, or Red's hunting acclaimed through Grantham Street, had shaken him. Wiping the sweat from his brow, Aren regarded the stolen object. The form beneath the cloth suggested a cylindrical shape, reminding him of a small tin can. Surely, the Reds wouldn't be deployed to retrieve a nicked can of meat. Aren breathed in and steeled himself. "We see what we've got, and then we head straight for the fence. The sooner we turn this thing into Domini, the better." Approaching the object as if it were an unstable vial of explosive liquid, Aren reached for the cloth and unwrapped his loot with trembling fingers. When the cloth fell away, Ref crowded in, and both men stared in wonderment at the elegant piece of jewellery it had been concealing.
"Well, I'll be damned,"
Ref said after a long pause.
"I think all those years of keeping you clothed and fed has finally paid off for old Ref."
He rubbed his stumps together like a greedy tycoon. Aren shot his mentor a glare of annoyance, but remained silent as he regarded the item with interest. Sized to fit a slender wrist, The silver bracelet had 2 rows of alternating segments surrounding its circumference, each segment containing one of 4 symbols: mountains, 5 wavy lines, flames, or cresting wave. Given the context, Aren assumed the wavy lines symbolized blowing wind. Besides 2 inline triangular indicators on the bracelet's outer edges, one touching water and the other wind, there were no other deviations from the simple design. Aren hesitated, then reached out and touched the artifact. "Bloody hell!" Aren shouted as he and Ref jumped back several steps. The bracelet had separated at the boundaries of each segment and snapped open, as if beckoning for Aren to slip his hand inside. "Do it, Aren," a voice whispered in his mind. "Enjoy the spoils of your work." Ignoring the protests of his primal brain, Aren reached into it. The artifact clamped shut like a bear trap, snagging Aren's wrist and startling him. It fit snug against his skin, sparing his bones from crushing fractures.
"Well, that was unexpected."
Ref trailed off. He stood gawking at Aren, mouth open. Aren stared back, perplexed, and waved his hand in the old man's face. "You all right there, Stubbs? Brain finally gave out?" Ref raised a shaky arm and pointed it at the top of Aren's head.
"You have lightning coming out of your skull, Ren."
Aren paused, then laughed. "You're losing it, old man," he said, moving toward his wall-mounted mirror. "There's no way." Aren froze. Arcs of tiny lightning bolts danced around his head. His logical mind, sharpened by years of thieving and bitter survival, refused to believe his eyes. Aren ruffled his slick black hair as if he were being attacked by a swarm of bothersome gnats. The phenomenon stopped. "Right," Aren said, after taking a moment to regain his composure. "That's enough dress-up for today." He grasped the bracelet and tugged, but it didn't budge. Twisting the bracelet did nothing but rotate the dual sets of symbols. The object itself remained in place. Aren glared at the artifact on his wrist, cursing it in his mind. The earth and water symbols stared back, taunting him. "You shouldn't have put us on," he could almost hear them say. "They'll catch you, and they'll cut us off. Your hand with it." "Ref, help me find something around here to get this damn thing off," Aren said. The 2 men began searching Aren's room from top to bottom, which, despite its size, proved a difficult task. A decade's worth of pilfered trinkets cluttered every square inch of usable space. Non-fensible items and trophies from memorable jobs lie among the clutter. Aren had never worried about being caught with contraband. No self-respecting claimed would be caught dead in Far End, let alone in a Farling's room. Even the dreaded Reds only made an appearance for brazen crimes, as if the King-Emperor enjoyed seeing his High District subjects brought down a rung or 2 on occasion. As long as you weren't foolish enough to steal from the Overlord himself. Best not to think about that now. He grunted and dug through loot piles for a tool to remove an object likely stolen from the Overlord himself.
"Oi, Ren! I found a brick!"
Ref said after an hour of searching.
"When the bloody hell did you steal a brick? And why?"
"Don't ask me stupid questions at a time like this, Ref," Aren said. "Give me the brick and I can smash this bracelet. We'll dispose of the pieces and forget this whole thing ever happened." Ref hesitated and gazed at the bracelet. His mouth curved in a slight frown, then sighed before handing over the brick.
"I can't watch,"
he said, skulking away.
"Bloody shame it is."
Aren laid his arm upon the table and took a few deep breaths before raising the ruddy brick. "Here goes nothing." He brought the brick down, striking the bracelet square on. Several things happened at once. The bracelet rang with a hollow, otherworldly sound, reverberating like a distorted bell. A flash lit up the room, emanating from the object itself, and the floor beneath Aren's feet trembled. The bracelet, however, showed no signs of damage. Aren scowled.
What is this thing made of?
Aren examined the artifact and grunted in frustration. He laid his hand down again, raised the brick, and slammed it down. The ringing and the flash arose as before, but the tremor increased in magnitude. Deciding he would try one last time, Aren raised the brick, but with less confidence. His hand quivered as he held the piece of hardened clay aloft. Ref shuffled back to the table and placed his handless forearm on Aren's shoulder.
Maybe give it a rest, my boy,
he whispered.
There's something unholy about that bracelet.
Aren glanced at the brick, then down to the bracelet. After a moment of reflection, he looked to his mentor and said, I have to, Ref. He brought the brick down one final time, and the world around him came apart. Aren lost his sense of orientation as he tumbled, his ears filled with the splintering cacophony of rending wood. He had little time to comprehend the rush of stifling far-end air and warmth of sunlight before his body slammed into the cracked cobblestone street.